Right, so I've got a little bit of a different background to what I have had recently today. I haven't filmed a normal YouTube video in so long, and I think you can hear, you probably can hear that I'm quite nasally, and I've basically got like a really irritating cold. It's my birthday tomorrow and I really just want to be feeling well. I've got a big like day planned, I've got lots of things that I need to do today, and I just feel rubbish. I feel really nauseous, and yeah, I've got this like sore throat and cold thing. I've just taken some of these. I'm like living off of Lemsip tablets and Lemsip and lemon and honey, all of the lemon things. Yeah, this is my April and May reading wrap up. I read 6 books over the 2 months. April, I basically read hardly anything, so I didn't actually put a different, like an individual video up about that because there wasn't much point, because I can't remember if I actually got any books completely read because I was reading 2 really long ones, so yeah, I don't think I did. But I've got 2 Kindle books that I can't show you because my Kindle's broken and I'm really upset about it, but I think I'm getting a new one for my birthday. My boyfriend's been asking a lot of Kindle based questions, so fingers crossed. It's been broken for a while now. It keeps like switching off and it's very difficult to get it to turn back on, and usually I can hold down the off button until it resets itself, but it takes a while for it to do that, and this time it just, nothing will happen. I've got the Kindle Fire and it's like 5 years old, and I've spoken to a couple of other people that had the same problem with it when it's reached that kind of age, so I feel like maybe they're just not meant to last. So the first one, I've got a list, which is why I keep looking down. The first one is Thus Bad Begins by Javier something. I will put it down below because I haven't written that down and I've completely forgotten, because it was the one that I finished right at the start of May. Yeah, it was written quite recently. I think it was written in the 2000s, and it was all about a guy on a film, like working with a director, living in his house, and working with him and his wife Beatrice, and the director man hates his wife. He is awful to her. He's very manipulative. She just wants to sleep in the same bed as him and love him, but he's holding this kind of mistake that she's made years and years before over her head, and ultimately she ends up trying to commit suicide and then succeeding as well. And it's the first like adult fiction book that I've read which actually deals with mental health in a very good way. I really find that young adult fiction deals with it in a really, really good way, and adult fiction is very flippant. It doesn't look at it in a kind of sensitive way or in a way that kind of explores the kind of nuances of mental health. It's always quite blunt, and I think this is something that can really be worked on. Or maybe I'm just reading the wrong kind of general adult fiction books. I think the only one that I thought did some kind of justice was Eleanor Oliphant Is Completely Fine, and I think I'm hoping that the popularity of that kind of spurs publishers on to look at adult fiction books that are looking at mental health problems. Yeah, it kind of investigates a lot of manipulation and deception and what a marriage looks like for an outsider when there's marital issues, and I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was something that I should have read whilst at uni, and I didn't. It was quite long. That was the main downfall, that it was quite long, but I never really lost interest in it. It was just quite slow. And then the second Kindle book I read was One Day in December. Again, I can't remember who it's written by, and I don't have my Kindle's broken, so I can't look. I'm giving this, I think I've written down 3 stars, but I think I'm gonna give it 2. No, maybe I'll give it 3. I did read half of it in like one night. I stayed up and read it, but it was just very like awkward. The story follows 2 best friends. They met at university, I think, and basically one of them, she's on a bus one day, she sees a guy sat at a bus stop, it's December, and they lock eyes and she falls completely in love with him, and she spends the next year searching for him. She tells her best friend all about it, and then she gets a new boyfriend, the best friend does, and I can assume you guys can see where this is going, and the boyfriend is the guy that she locked eyes with. Yeah, there's a lot of like elements of like trust and betrayal and friendship, but I just found I never really got into it. I didn't really empathise with any of the characters, so I'm going to give it a 2 or 3 stars. I haven't decided what yet. And then, so the first actual book I finished was Clash of Kings, and it's 900 pages long, but I loved it. The first 300 pages or so were kind of like setting it up. They were quite slow, but they were very important to the story. This is the second book in the Game of Thrones series. I read the first book last July and I found it a little bit tricky trying to get back into it, but I'm going to do a big video that hopefully won't go on for too long because I'm going to film it next, and my battery is flashing. Kind of given a big plot breakdown, but this loosely kind of follows series 2 of the TV show. It has loads of character points of view. It takes you through, basically there's quite a few kings. I think there's 5 kings. There's Robb Stark, King of the North, King Stannis Baratheon, King Renly Baratheon, King Joffrey Baratheon, and then Daenerys is kind of floating about overseas. If you don't know anything about Game of Thrones, it's a Game of Thrones. The second story kind of takes you through these kind of warring factions, and the book is told from 9 character points of view, this one I think, or 8, and then the third one expands. But yeah, I really like this. Daenerys' story in it is quite dull, I found, but yeah, it kind of like builds a lot of, it sets a lot of scenes for future things that happen. If you've seen the last series, The Fire and Daenerys, to not give any spoilers, there's a lot of fire involved with her in this one as well. So yeah, it kind of sets the scene. I'm giving it 5 stars. I was fully obsessed. I had the biggest book hangover afterwards. And yeah, I spent ages and ages writing up this big blog post of a plot breakdown by character. So, and I loved it. I needed that for my book hangover. The next thing this was the next thing I read, which is A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sara Bernard. I read Beautiful Broken Things and I loved it. It was one of the like only teen YA books that I've read that focuses completely on female friendship. This doesn't, but it was still very good. I've given it 4 stars. It basically tells the story of Steffi and Rhys. Steffi has selective mutism, which has like evolved from a trauma that she went through when she was a child, and Rhys is deaf. But they can both sign language a bit, and they basically end up getting together quite early on in the book actually, but they have a few problems, and they both find it very hard to kind of love. It was like just a nice young adult romance. I can't remember if I've already said I'm giving it 4 stars, but it was like a nice quick read to have a break from Game of Thrones, which was quite intense. And then I read The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which I was going to do a whole kind of video about and breaking it down, but I think I've left it too long between reading it and now to be able to do that kind of well. This I'm giving 5 stars. I loved it. So the main character is called Aidan Bishop. He wakes up every morning for 8 days in the body of a different person at a party, and at 11 PM on that day, Evelyn Hardcastle is killed. And he has to work out who the murderer is so that he can escape this loop. And basically I thought it was going to be 8 days one after another, but he's actually, although he wakes up and it feels like a different day for each body, it's very complicated. It's the same day, so he is kind of all 8 people at once on the same day, and they have different kind of abilities and drawbacks. So there's Lord Ravencourt, who is very clever but very, very fat. And there's a lot of like fat-phobic language in here. I don't know how this got past like the publisher, and this was like a massive drawback for it. But he feels more disgusted when he's in the body of this fat man than when he's in the body of a rapist, which is not great at all. And I wish the language had been changed, and I hope that maybe if there's edits in the future that it could be, but I don't think it will, which is disappointing. But the story itself was so complex that I just admired the author so much in being able to bring all these strings of narrative together and make them match up. So yeah, there's lots and lots of twists and turns in this that I never saw coming. And then the last book that I finished just before the end of the month is A Storm of Swords Part 1, Steel and Snow. This is 600 pages, and when I looked at it I was like, oh, that seems reasonable, which shows how much the Game of Thrones series has like skewed my perception of the length of books. Yeah, part 2 is 600 pages as well, and it's what I'm going to read next. But this carries on obviously from the second one. I'm giving it 5 stars as well, and it's not as dramatic. There weren't as many like key points and key scenes as the second one, but the one scene that I really, well, there were 2 bits that I really loved. One is where you see Jaime Lannister have his hand cut off, and I've seen like bits of the TV series, but I only think I've seen, I didn't know what happened to his hand at all, so I really like that. And then the second bit is where Daenerys buys the Unsullied, and her and Drogon kill the slave masters, and that is really good. Again, there's a lot of fire in that. Yeah, I'm giving this 5 stars. I'm really excited to read part 2. Apparently part 2 is where the Red Wedding happens, and I've heard that it's brutal and horrible, but I haven't read it and I haven't seen it, so I don't actually know exactly what happens. So I'm looking forward to that, and yeah, it felt like a lot of this was setting kind of the scene for that. So that's my really long April and May reading wrap up. I usually try to keep it a lot more succinct than that, but I obviously didn't manage this month. So thank you for watching if you got this far, and I will see you again soon. Bye!